Hi, today we're going to talk about grafting, and we have a few examples here that we've done in the past, Rick and I have done. And some people think, why do we do grafting? We do grafting, in this particular case, we do grafting because we would like to see if we can get a plant that's growing very, very slowly and graft it onto a really vigorous rootstock so that you can get a lot of growth out of that top part, which we would call the scion. So I made a little graft tool here that I was going to show you. And when we talk about, there's two sections. We talk about the rootstock and we talk about the scion. So the scion would be the top part of the plant, and of course the rootstock would be the bottom. So rootstock would be the part that would be very, very vigorous, and then we would, in this particular case, we would use a saddle graft, or what is called a cleft graft. And the scion would fit exactly down inside there, and then we would tape it up, and this would grow on to be the top part of the plant, okay? So we have a few examples that we have. This is one here that Rick and I did a few years back. This was done 2 years ago. No, actually it was done last May. We did this. The bottom part of this plant is called a Boswellia elongata. It comes from the island of Socotra. And this top section, the scion, is another Boswellia, and it's Boswellia socotrana, which is also from that same island. And the deal is that this rootstock grows into a huge tree, 25-foot tree, but the scion is much smaller in stature. It doesn't grow that tall. So I've had this plant here for many years, and it grows very slowly. And so we grafted it onto this, and it's grown this whole branch in a year. It's grown this whole branch in a year. And in the winter, it kind of goes a little bit deciduous, so there's not a whole lot of growth on it. But it will be growing here soon. It's springtime. So you saw that the bottom part of the rootstock is always, almost always the V cut, and then the scion would be the arrow cut on the top that fits inside there. So you can see that on this particular one. I've done it both ways. This one seems to be the best. We have another example here, and this is another, the rootstock is Boswellia elongata also on this particular one. We know that rootstock is very vigorous, and so we have grafted another plant that grows into a large tree, and the scion part of this plant is it's another Boswellia, and this is a Boswellia called Dioscorides, and it also comes from the island of Socotra. Now, the issue with this particular one is, like, I have never seen this particular this Dioscorides flower, and so it grew this whole stalk, it grew this piece here, and grew this piece up here. So it grew all these three pieces within the last year. The interesting thing is, this spring, it flowered for the first time. And I'd never seen this. I've had this plant for years, it's never flowered. So what do we do now? Now what we can do is, I have another plant that comes from the island of Socotra, and it is called Boswellia nana. And it's a smaller stature plant, and I wanted to pollinate these flowers to see if I could get seed on this. This particular form of Dioscorides, there's two forms. They come in kind of a dark green color, and this is the bluish form. It's kind of hard to tell on these particular leaves since they're new, but on some of the older leaves you can see they have a bluish hue to them, kind of a blue-gray. So what I've done is I crossed Nana onto this, and I've got one seed set on here. So it would be great to have a very small statured Nana, which has a dark green leaf, to maybe come with a bluish leaf, and see how that would work. So these are a few examples that we've used here in the department. If you think about other types of trees, here we have a fruit tree. This is a fruiting mulberry tree. And they have grafted a smaller section up high onto the tree, because what they wanted to do with this is they wanted to form a standard tree instead of a bush. This particular graft that's on the top here, this is a bush form. And what they did was they grew, or the grower probably grew this other mulberry up to a certain size, trimming all the side shoots off of it, and got it up to a certain size, 4 or 5 feet tall, trimmed it off, and then grafted this bush type on top of it. So then it will be a standard tree that has many branches on top of it. This one needs to be pruned a little bit. I'm sure Rick will probably get into it and prune it here when we're done. Because you would want it to stay small. A lot of these trees you would want to prune down to size, so you don't have to reach up too tall to go in and pick the fruit off of them. A lot of our apple trees and peaches and other trees over in our orchard area, those are all grafted onto dwarf rootstocks. Okay. All right, hold on a second.